I am 22 female, and I work full-time at a local steakhouse-style restaurant. There's a policy with the employees regarding free food based on the length of your shift, and the other day I was working a double, which meant I got 2 free meals, one at the end of my first shift and one at the end of my second. There are a few things we as employees can't pick for our free meals due to costs, but we still have access to nearly the entire menu. Another part of this policy is that if we pick something, and one of the ingredients required is almost gone, we're allowed to keep our pick and tell the customer that we're sold out of that particular item. This applies to all sides, salads, soups, etc. Usually though, if we say we're out, we really did run out regardless of employee meal picks. Anyways, on the day that I worked my double, we were about 2 hours out from closing and I sat a couple who were on a first date. Just assuming by some things they said, plus he name-dropped a popular dating app. When they were ready to order their meals, the girl just so happened to ask for sirloin. But that was the cut I chose for my second meal and we were down to our last one. I apologized and told her that we were out, and the pouted and told me she would need another minute to decide. Her date shot me a dirty look and told me he needed more time now, too, so I went to check on my other tables. They seemed to be having a good date, laughing a lot and smiling. But they were immediately quiet and standoffish every time I checked on them, and interrupted me with, "Just the check, please," while I was asking if they'd like any dessert. I brushed it off, as it's not the first time I've had a rude customer, and brought them their bill. He wrote a big 0 on the tip line and a little note that read, "Thanks for ruining my date. Hope your night sucks too." I told my coworkers during closing, who all agreed the guy was being an ass. But when I called up my dad the next day and the topic of work and those particular customers came up, he told me I should have been less selfish and just let the woman have the sirloin and that I should have picked something else. He told me they didn't handle it very well, but that young lady had probably been looking forward to that steak. You knew you could have given it to her and you didn't. I'm honestly a little disappointed in you. That really hurt my feelings and I've been wondering if I was actually in the wrong. I don't believe it was a money thing. The guy ordered a pretty expensive seafood dish and the girl had one of our pricier cocktails. The sirloin is not our cheapest steak option. Yes, I'm aware that it's a weird policy. But it's our policy and my bosses encourage employee satisfaction so that we can ensure customer satisfaction. I do not eat steak for free every day I work there. I have it once every 1 to 2 weeks. University is starting back soon, so many of my friends started moving back to town. I am 17 female, live in a house with 5 friends. I wasn't born in the UK but moved here with my parents when I was 17. We come from another European country, so I speak my native language, English, which is far from perfect. I've been learning Spanish and English since I was little and my Spanish is better than my English. I don't have an obvious accent in English, people just assume that I am Canadian. We had a small party on Saturday and one friend brought his new girlfriend, Jess. Jess 20, and she's the reason why I am posting here. Jess made sure to let everyone know that she's a polyglot and speaks multiple languages. I was obviously impressed. I study modern languages, meaning that I'm learning Italian and German on top of Spanish. And obviously I asked what languages she speaks: Spanish, Japanese, Arabic, my native language, German, Korean, and French. I told her how impressed I was and carried on with my evening. I had a short phone call with my mom, whom I obviously speak to in my native tongue, and I went out of the house to talk to her. Jess was out in the garden and heard my conversation and she corrected me on my pronunciation. I told her that she was in the wrong and she insisted that she knows better. I didn't fancy getting into any arguments, so I ignored her and went back inside saying, whatever. Later, I bumped my head and swore loudly in Spanish. I tend to code switch a lot when drunk, and she corrected my pronunciation, which was funny because it was her who was incorrect. I ignored her again. A while later I wanted my friend, who is from Spain, to hand me something, but I forgot how it's called in English. So I said, "Hand me Spanish word, please," knowing my friend would understand. Jess decided to correct me again, using completely incorrect word. My friend and I looked at each other, and me being drunk, I lost any self-control I had. I spoke to Jess in Spanish asking her what the hell she thinks she's doing. And she looked at me telling me that my Spanish was so wrong that she didn't understand a word. It wasn't, but okay. So I told her the same thing in my native tongue. To which she replied with the same thing. I laughed at her and told her it's my native language and she really shouldn't lie about being a polyglot and correcting people when she doesn't actually speak those languages. She was fuming. She tried to grab her boyfriend's hand and leave with him, but he was too drunk to care and just said, "Told you to stop lying." I don't know how she got my number, but she called me this morning screaming what an asshole I am to humiliate her like that, and if she knew I spoke the language, she wouldn't have corrected me. I do feel bad now. I realize how humiliating this must have been for her, but on the other hand, she shouldn't have been lying. I am a 33 years old female, have been engaged to my fiancé, 37 male, for 5 months. We don't share finance because that's what he wants. I got a raise on my salary. Now I earn 30% more than he does, and I notice that he's been using this to ask me to pay for him and his friends. Whenever I say no, or why should I pay for this, he'd respond with the 30%, that's why. He acts as if the 30% is unfair or that I'm not deserving of it. Several times he has tricked me to pay for his and his friends' meals by asking me publicly. Let me say that I'm too nice to say no. I hate confrontation, especially when we're at a public place like a restaurant, so I just grin and pay. Last Tuesday, he asked me to join him and his buddies for dinner. I told him from the start I wasn't paying for their food and he shouldn't expect me to. He said he got this and no worries. We got to the restaurant, met his friends, ordered food. And in the middle of the meal he leaned in and whispered that I would be paying for everything he and his friends ordered. I got so mad I whispered back, no. But he probably relied on me not causing a scene in public and in front of his friends. He said, "You have enough money, you could pay for everyone's food, 30%, remember?" I was fuming inside. Instead of reacting negatively and losing my temper, I waited till the bills arrived. They were already split from the start when we first ordered. I paid for mine, then I excused myself to the restroom. I then sneaked out from there, got into my car and went home. I started getting phone calls from my fiancé, then texts asking where I was. I texted back saying I didn't appreciate how he put me in this situation and basically tricking me into paying for his and his friends' food. I told him I went home, then stopped replying. An hour later he came and started yelling at me, calling me selfish, irrational, cheapskate and childish for sneaking out like that and leaving him stuck with a bill he could not pay. He had to call his brother for help. We had a loud argument, then he walked out. His friends didn't speak to me on this, but he told me they're disappointed in my behavior and are telling him to take time and reflect on the type of woman he's gonna be married to. He said that because the restaurant wasn't expensive, then I could have just paid. He admitted not telling me about it till later, knowing I'd refuse. He still thinks my reaction was childish and unacceptable. My wife, Irene, is very fit. She likes working out and has a proper exercise regime, etc. She believes that if she feels good, she looks good, and she feels good working out, so who am I to stop her? My brother, Will, spent the latter half of last year going through a messy divorce and now needs a place to stay. Though my brother and I aren't very close, I figured he would only stay with us for a couple weeks until he got back on his feet. Will is a typical gym rat. He's always on a very strict diet, always working out and bragging about his gains. I've worked out with him a few times and he's a little obnoxious. He's always mad at you if you don't work at his pace and is always trying to correct your form. He's a pretty fit and muscular guy, but I don't like to exercise with him. Will has been pushing Irene to work out with him because, according to him, she won't be able to keep up with him. Irene mostly just shrugs him off with a laugh and tells him she would love to work out with him. Irene works out in the mornings, 3 times a week, and then does a run in the evening. But she's been busy this past week and hasn't been able to stick to her usual schedule. Will thinks that she's making excuses because she doesn't want to be embarrassed by him. Again, Irene just laughs him off. About 2 days ago, Irene and Will went on an early morning run. I didn't go with them, but the first thing I heard when Will entered the house was, "The only reason I couldn't keep up with you, Irene, is because you were sweating too much." I found this extremely comical, and kinda just laughed him off. Irene rolled her eyes and went to take a shower, so I thought that the conversation would die. However, Will just kept bringing up my wife's sweat. My wife went to work and he told her to make sure she doesn't sweat through her clothes. or when she called me in the middle of day. He yelled, "Tell the sweaty." I said hi. Of course, the comment aggravated me and I told him to knock it off and stop acting like a child. I thought that was the end of it, but he just kept going. By the end of the day, I was tired of his comments, but Irene seemed rather unfazed by them. When she served him food, he made a comment about her sweating into the food. At this point, I was at my wit's end and I told him to stop acting like a slow, referring to his running pace, loser, and eat his food. Will, of course, got angry and said the only reason he was going slower than usual was because he was distracted by my wife's unhygienic sweat. Irene looked a bit offended by this, and I told Will that I would kick him out if he made another comment like that. He's been super pissed ever since. I jokingly told this story to a mutual friend and they agreed with Will. Maybe I shouldn't be so harsh. I didn't expect this amount of responses. I've decided to kick him out. He will be staying at a nearby hotel now.